Vitaly, friends. I don't care about Vitaly. Yak, we are extremely with you, and added are on the air now. I'm in Berlin today. In principle, we cannot say that we have residual results of these times. There we are also checking on the differences between the President of the United States, Donald Trump, with the President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, and the European leader. We can say that it was two intense and important days for us, because I have already richly run a marathon from the body to the unintelligent plan of Donald Trump. What is important for us here on the Tilka obtained by the mayor, what we are fine with you, of course. You can't achieve without the adoration of Russia to the mayor. For you and me, it is already important whose situation so far in the Ya case, the received states will be on our bot, and not on the bot of the Russian Federation. Not on Putin's bot, what we are on. I'm still a special president with the staff received. Sympathizing with the president of the Russian Federation and bashing in the prospects for an economic sphere with Moscow. President Zelensky, I'm just a sprat. Valenty Toma made a statement, which is published on his official website. Let's read it. Yesterday, we had Persia oysters with Pan Vitkov, Ipan Kushner, and the same with the US team. Before the tag, after all, the behavior and oysters were carried out by our teams. Also important is a colleague from the State of America received all the details even before the guilt. Allegedly, we had a wound from an oyster. Progress was vatch for the fact that we looked more destructive according to the idea. And it definitely won't help us. It is important that today they are not listed in our new editions of documents. Important because they are important. Well, here's another saying by the President on the peaks of documents. I also sent the American delegation. You know that today, President Zelensky, French President Emmanuel Macron, and the representative of the European Commission Stura von der Leyen, and the Federal Chancellor, are not swords, and Friedrich Mercy, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, are so eager to get an oyster into those oyster boru. The leaders will be there and the bulls will be in Fikusna, and there the Tesh continued once Yaki as a result. Respect God to the participants, and get not productive and from the point of view of Dosiag I as a result. Here are the same Yaki results in principle, I have understood, and to date, the oysters of the coalition. He wants to. She is richly bilsh. I was there, and Finnish President Alexander Stupa was there, when Polish Minister Donald Tusk, and Italian Prime Minister George Meloni, and Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and Dani Prime Minister Matt Fredriksson, Dutch Prime Minister Five Dick Schoof, and Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson. This is actually a mini-summit of the European Union for the fate of Withoff and Kushner. More POTA on photos, and bought him at a discount in the warehouse. The European leaders vaccinated their statement with the nightly progress of those arrested in Ukraine, and meant that there would be further but key crocs, and I would not do anything similar yet. What does this mean? You are now saying that it was possible to overestimate up to 90 hundredths. Here, the European leaders are still hovering over their declaration. The Friedrich Merz Yak declared a mirror position of all the summit participants. Europeans have instilled overnight progress in Trump's bills for ensuring a fair and peaceful mayor in Ukraine. And they will be opposed in mind with Trump and still preserving the Ukrainian sovereignty of the European one. European leaders prognut to guarantee that these visits are economically visible for Ukraine. Dake's firm specific ideas poked out by the claim. You turn on the stick, then I will start Ukraine to send my dropped forces to the Riviera 800,000 temples service. In just 1 hour. So that mats in the stream and conflicts protect the territory of Ukraine. Pete is jealous of Europe richly, the national forces will be a brother. And the fate of the help is visible in the unshackled forces of Ukraine for ensuring the Ukrainian sky on the seas. Game in the environment of Ukraine. That is, it gave the front line. So the leaders of the European Ukrainians were sent even before the target of the monitoring mechanism. Checks of Propa in the fire with the received states, and for the international fate, to ensure an early sample of Yakum and Butnya attack. More mats and wrecks before the situation de-escalates. And so the bookmark is up to legally both of the visits are lived in for the mayor to see if maybe is not a dropped attack. I will help the dropped intelligence forces of material and technical, economical, diplomatic day. What are called guarantees will be similar to the 5th article. And here I would like you to still be kind of driven to appear at a time in the media. Actually American. Just prote that the sides up poked through. I'm just going to send a guarantee model. Even American officials will try to issue such guarantees when they are hired. And maybe they will legally tie the plague with praise from non-Congresses. It is legally tied that with the receipt of the states will be a brother and participation in the defense of Ukraine in the Rada. Even after the signing of the Mir agreements, Russia will again be reaped on us for pasta. The document of the same European behavior is about the fact that European Ukraine will invest in the prosperity of Ukraine, and will be in the future of Ukraine before the European Union. And that 2020 hand, I'm all in Trump's plan. I think so, and I would say, the time for Ukraine. Ukraine is still up to 2027, and we are on the verge of 2026 chalet to join the European Union. The document is critically important stagnation, prote that international cordons are not by force. And to repeat the tortures raised by the primates of the people of Ukraine and the hoped-for guarantees. And empty words, of course. Mirror torture with a drive to serious houses of the Ukrainian American delegation pits. And I think it's really about the conclusions of the Ukrainians in the territory of Donetsk region, but about the fact that Ukraine with factual, but legal control over the territory. Of Russian control over the territory occupied by the Russians, 2014 rock. And Kola says that embroider sticks by the people of Ukraine again refers to the kind of visible articles of the Ukrainian constitution. The power of the territorial integrity of Ukraine does not boil in the chair. It can embroider tilki with the shlyak of the territorial people's referendum. However, the Stiga drive, I think, is really a discussion between lawyers. There is another article of the Ukrainian constitution. Right behind the snake. The territorial integrity of Ukraine is still the truth in a non-consulting way. What is the equestrian method of treason? No one will tell you so directly about the referendum. And from the point of view of the bucket, I will tell you that there will be no torture in what will happen after the referendum, even before the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Here the torture is not that the decision of the Verkhovna Rada. With this and on the truth, a real interpretation of what the people's referendum is about, and further implementation of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Replace the Ukrainian constitution in terms of non-territorial integrity. I will already cut out the Constitutional Court of Ukraine. This is despite the fact that I still sent the Hromadiyans of Ukraine out of the territory in a referendum. So the truth is not such an easy situation to give up. In fact, in the West. And discounts, of course, I'm overgrown with territorial reasons. The European leaders are still working on the torture. I will need to cut out at the final stage. And I will not do anything to please them yet. All sides have not intensively worked against a solution, as it is possible to provide a supply of military operations. Well, it is also known that he will twist up to Russia with a lock to show and readiness to fight against the local mayor. And we will continue, and I will take Russia with this Russia. Seems. Again, we will discuss it with you. You and I absolutely do not know what is overgrown in the city. We are not addicted, does not include greedy consultations with Moscow. From the Bull visit to the Russian capital. Jared Kushner, Russia, in open contact on Maya, all times go just with the Russian side. So that's it. And that there is no direct contact with the Russian side. Well, here it is, but you wrote it for the European summit, which is actually in those statements, and the guarantee plan for Ukraine. Graze on the Vyskova Petka of Ukraine. On the Zhu River, 800,000 temples rendered a washing hour. Richly national forces are under the wire of Europe, and will be formed in a coalition of the decisive ones obtained in the state. The control mechanism is on fire, but with the received states, I legally bind the investment guarantees visible outside of Ukraine, and in the stupa of Ukraine to the European Union. I'll read, we talked about, Frida said. I'll just report it. So in that regard, we are really, in my mind, of course, that the Europeans have their own Balkans, and Baki was just poured from oysters. From Coils and Mikushkin, because Victor, of course, I will be present at the summit resolution. However, despite my torment, which no one talks about with the Russians, today's press conference was in London. The Mi-6 wineries. I am capitulating to Putin on purpose. Dragging out the Russian leader is not seriously put behind the minds that are pleasant for the Russian Federation. But in fact, those who closely analyze Putin's ideas, and absolutely, however, will see the torture. I will continue with his duel and further. We don't give up that all the highlights of our times with you are, of course. We are talking now in principle. We can also talk about what happens to Americans and Ukrainians. I have managed to bring our positions closer to the positions in Kushna. At a time, we will dilute both Zelensky and European leaders and Donald Trump. Jarella killed him in the House. It seemed that the American president was really pleased with the progress of the workshop. And so absolutely real, I would say such snakes in the settings of the American president until recently, who seem to have read the Polar Plan. And all but the fact that Trump is in a good mood of what happens in Berlin, and important and good sodium everywhere on his mind. And with the president of Ukraine, European leaders. We are still overgrown with the most president from the received in the state. I will embroider yak look and away. But the fact that Kiev, obviously, today is not on the idea of withdrawing the Donetsk region of Ukraine on its visas, and often on how the Ukrainian army is controlled. With the receipt of the states, in principle, the weather may be on fire on the line of corrosion, in the niche of torture. And Russians, we don't get comments tied up from topics, because the situation looks tied up with the Russian one. The apple trees have been washed. I do not believe in the temper of Nikola, and that the Russians are preparing to end the war. Once again, Ukrainian troops will withdraw from the Donetsk region. I respect the continued guilt of simply destabilizing the situation in Ukraine. Yet the Russians simply had enough of destabilizing the government, and even in those destabilizations, it was possible to knock out the efforts to occupy new Ukrainian territories. And what will happen and we dilute ourselves. That's why we advise our allies even before we look like that. For me, extremely food with serious nutrition is an attempt to guarantee. But we are implementing a comprehensive plan of European guarantees. And we are still Bakim Kushny, Revit, says that with the fact that the American guarantees. And I don't understand the logic of the process, of course. I still Russia sent there seriously for the restless in the stupa of Ukraine to NATO. Ukraine's NATO members will get closer, and the cordon is what it can in a direct conflict for America. And with the receipt of the staff, and it seems so, of course, we and yours are seriously interested in the rooms. It's just that on your territory, there will be European Visca on the Ukrainian territory about the past, and we are also attacking Ukraine. Middle brother and I study in the conflict. Chintzy cut out the 5th article of NATO for Russia. In Russia, it is necessary. And why are we with you? Of course, Russia did not need Ukraine to join NATO based on what we download in Russia. You're fine, of course, we don't upload to him yet. Russia itself wants to download Ukraine there. With what rank Russia can give it, and it will know that it can in direct conflict with the received states. Then here I am a simple torture. And we that all the blame Putin's idea is turned off by the fact that the occupiers are frequent on Ukrainian territory. And he will pretend to the ruins. But the chain is full of Myachnia. Now, of course, I have sent discounts to the Russian Ochilny Doklov to continue the fault of the discount and put it. Yakin, who died in the international situation of his Ukraine, sacrificed $2 billion for the sake of everything that happened. For the Rada, the past is still frequent in the Donetsk and Lugansk, Kherson, and Paris regions. But high for the Rada of the whole Donetsk region. What else? Well, not exactly Thiel guilt, and I smell the rich people. Let's give it to him in the Donetsk region. The wine is over, we will not demand it from you. The wallpaper is waist length. What do we have in the truth? Russia has such a difficult economic situation that, in principle, we are with you, my constitution is still President Putin. Just enough on what minds for guilt to make it look like. Here. And in those situations Yama, of course. Vin may be satisfied with the stuff of the Donetsk region. I am so eager to conquer the Russian aggressors now of guilt. And a sign that, in principle, not greedily off are poached from under the couch. Well, here I am just in those shafts you are all President Donald Trump, and with rough and conditions, tied up. And with Russian-Ukrainian guilt. After talking to the European leader and Zelensky, we had a good conversation with European leaders about the war in Ukraine. Trump is similar inside. And we are already talking about the process of a long hour. I'm still going to be gone, we're overgrown with blisses to the mayor below, but we're still claiming them. We can say we're reading them live for you, so I'll overlook my snatches with you. Well, that's what the American plan for the version of the axis of the same, and publicly the C plan for Trump and the dark, revealed Dmitri's plans for a propane tank in the United States to please. On the day of Ukraine, NATO styles have serious guarantees in exchange for painful territorial actions. Edible from the plan. After all, Ukraine will often set foot in the Donbass it controls, and it will become a demilitarized zone of the southern economy. And in that part with the United States. This is a European ally, and for once the fifth article. As for Ukraine's membership in the EU, and allocating billions to it is visible. In Berlin, we made progress even before the guarantee, and went into a remote territory with a drive. The fact that the American and Ukrainian working groups will meet in Miami that weekend will continue consultations on territorial torture. Here Trump characterizes the positions of history. In your style, I mean, what needs about situati in voice, there is not yet possible proclus simple. Here. Well, in short, seeming, Russians adore the cob, Finnish for the problem of the landfill is that he wants the cob. For the slave does not want. And Ukraine does not want to start with the cob. Well, you can proclaim the diplomatic I am in the end to change these positions. And so Nadia here is a screw saying, then still saying. In fact, it means the sides from Trump's point of view. You are now changing your positions and his well. I could say that the biggest problem is that Trump himself is changing his position. Then he is bragging about Putin. Then he says that he is a dictator. Then he says that there is democracy in Ukraine. Then in Ukraine about elections, then that democracy. He says that it is necessary to put the cob in the fire and on the fire, and not that he says that we still have the culmination of our stats in the fire. And you were also the president of Ukraine, rather than with the European leader. You thought I wasn't. She might change her position again. On the truth, good nutrition can be set in such situations. And I want to tell you that now all say that we are at a time below, if cola. Trump Erdogan, so that's it. You respect the Crimea between the president of Ukraine and Russia. For the greatest hour, she was just the one with the European leader. I'm just important. You such moments pass, so it is necessary to think. I'm going to look like. Well, that's why we are, in fact, overgrown with you, in a situation where we feel all these claims. I come in, and I don't spend the night at the Russian application step. Well, let's try their honor. Sergei Lavrov's interview with the Media Corporation of the Powers on Iran's tobacco radio. Russia chick and the reaction after all from the received states with the drive of their tails contacts with the Ukrainian side. Europe has not once in history acted as a geril of rats and problems, including colonialism and the saint. Genetically, the craving of rich Europeans to steal, obviously on the butt of the situation with the frozen Russian asset. I stole our territory from the Foreign Policy Department of Ukraine. This is fine, you know, the Russian syringe is stolen. On what kind of money you can just, I would say, write a golden leader. A leader, and on the cordon of the Russian Federation. European Ukrainians ignored all chances to participate in the Ukrainian regulation. Europe, with its approach before the conflict in Ukraine, is similar to a healer, a cob in a double. I do not understand the forob, gives a pill. But you have a strategy of national carelessness of the United States in the Maya pose in Europe, and so that the Europeans do not get involved in their machinations and the states. Here you bunt, said the Russian Minister of Foreign Rights, Yaki exactly on prekladadal. Well, now about the guarantees from the side of the Hey TV channel. I call the security-free guarantees platinum. Platinum. And on the Burr guarantee, and similar to the 5th article, I was killed for sure, and an American official told the TV channel to allow the stream and away from Russian aggression, and the mechanisms of de-conflict there monitors peaceful agreements. And the officials are buried in the details, including the role received in the state. What will not include that of the received in the state on the ground? That's the Tesh torture. That out of the received states on will include, and cola is overgrown with conflict. Chip is why I'm lying again. Well, and here's an important point, that calling those guarantees platinum and placing deduces that those propositions will not be pressed forever. What kind of guarantees are on the table? What at a time? Propane, it's of course that you need shukadi in order to shvidge, that is, well, and here Tesh is important. That it is preparing to go to Coffee Kushno again and to Russia. As that it will be needed for further discussion. But that's what I've already told you, we are in such situations forever and overestimation from the moment of a publicly different plan. That's why we act, we wake up in for Americans, we are Europeans. Absolutely did not understand the discounts we wake up in with the Russians. The discounts were paid by the counselor of Chernikov's diplomacy. Here I have another round of splitting the American-Ukrainian position. 1 American-Ukrainian European 1. And Witkov and Kushner will go to Putin, and our position will be affected, and I will not file a lawsuit. And Putin will say a kind direct line about your position there with such another adjustment. We are not Bach and Bam, and off the Europeans in Ukraine are not in anything. And the joke of such options allowed in Ukraine. Frequent on the territory of Donetsk region. Well, we're talking, why am I in such roses now? We say discounts are a real peace process, but discounts are just delaying an hour from the side of Russia. I am a respected tightening ruble. And Putin is really at a time. But still, Perch results from the Berlin Ostrich, I think as a result. Well, it's not the lowest result for us, that Trump for us again managed to disagree with the president. With the results obtained in the state. So much for an hour of scandal in the Oval Office. I think this is one of the most important diplomatic forces, and the Ukrainian state, not for America, and I will continue to exchange intelligence information received in his state. Now the United States is taking posts in Russia, but what will become sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil? It is necessary that the Americans continue to sell us their savings for European pennies, has not yet come to light. And at least for the Rada, a brother needs to participate in the negotiation process. TPPR, I want to ask you to subscribe to the feed of those who Esther's signed. I will be in your diachny. Guessing us ended up with just 2,000 subscriptions up to 1 million. In unless you will be 2,000, so be a weasel, be with 2,000. Be a weasel. Put your own in the Podobeki. To whom what do you think the process is a peace process? With tools to the channel. Come before the view lead to your torture. Wants to face 2 topics, I pose the very topic of the ether, and I respect them to entered. Today will continue, I would say. The tribulation in Australia with the drive to shoot people climbed on one of the beaches for the tradition of Nihon. On average, it was revealed that the bodies were coming out of Ukraine, and there were edits in everyday life there in Australia, including Divchina from Odessa is such a share that to take out of the place is under fire and Russians. And literally run with this and a barbarian. And there is a terrorist far away in mind of Ukraine, Australia. And on the mind of the tragedy you are in the ritual. Mahat people in Bisto, it was the one people were sent on their Vernasti Muslim believe. Tesh was a Muslim from a Muslim retinue, and once again, to bring the simple truth, that people are not removing religion. Which I respect is one of the most important lessons of tragedy. Today's podi is important, I want to say. And we hire to pass today's farewell in Lviv with the people's artist of Ukraine Stepan Giga with a beer. And I can say and was like this in the body of such a folk song, clearly not about the Ukrainian song. And spiva in the Ukrainian pics of our mass spivik namaga on other people's pop. Spivity. Someone else's new one. After all, it's for the powerful. Stepan Giga also sent him to stadiums on the roadside. The uprising on becoming the idol of the Ukrainian youth, and the rich of different regions of Ukraine. About the fact that she was behind his work, not people. Yaks are tempted to think about Ukraine, she creates Ukraine as well. That's the carnage. Carnage by genre, and swear up to different shari in the audience. And this is still all these people to eat. This is what allows us to do all of them Sanawati. This is another result of their creative work, whose impolitic I like the Ukraine. That figure of Stepan, she was so important for millions of people, that knocked out and still squeezed out from today's broadcast. I have rich people come to the garrison temple near Lviv. On Chaki, the uprising of the species, and the Shan theme, to his beloved Spivakov, and the correction was engaged. Willowly and their wider, and about Helenikon Spivak, and composer birth to him. We can say that we know perfectly well, of course, that Stepan Giga sang the smash hit of the Ukrainian song. And we'll have a rich hearing, and we have a hearing in France, not in Britain, for a long time not on stage. For a long time not with different generations of what mirrors the understanding of the armor of the national soul. It was important that it was just in the process today, since the year, that we choose Ukraine. In order for such songs to sound like a nation. Torture. On discounts, it is real for Ukraine to live up to 2029th lesson with such an American administration. And we will still do everything right. I will still be against diplomacy on the Chilnik Riviera. The powers on the Riviera for foreign policy. It is still visible that we will be European partners in this, and I will reset. I will continue this accordingly in Russia. So we can live up to the 2029th rock. What else can you miss on the web? Optimistic statements and various leaders' glimpses of Miza. Just a hint about every fallout from Trump's sweat. Extremely I process the skin ether. All the claims are glimpses, and we are namagani as if in the mainstream with the president from the received in the state. In mind, all these statements do not give it to the president with the results obtained in the state, but close to Putin. Of course. And I'm going to tell you now, the torture is not that you don't eat Trump. The torture is that you hire to the empty side of the president with the state in America and produced. To the point that we won't wash away and to the help. We need intelligence information from the state. We need that sanctions against the Russian Federation have been received from the states. We need a nation of the Russian economy. With the results obtained in the state. Vitaly, I respect, and who can really compete in the elections, and I thank you for your adoration of the presidential chair. I respect still the skin Maya are in their place. I just respect the eternal adoration of Sedata not in her sleigh. She has one of the greatest problems with a participating civilization. And so we do not know with you and maybe the presidential election, what we do not know. Wine. I'm at fault. They are also holding elections for the president of Ukraine. They are holding elections for the parliament. They have changed this Ukrainian constitution, it cannot. So, I admit that I am an order of magnitude given to the members of parliament. You can see the test, that before you hold elections, and for the sake of the election campaign and elections. Not 1 day, but 90. That there are 180, 60, I do not know who such decisions will be. And I still don't bet on the fact that it is firm the dates. So I will tell you buckets that I do not know what they look like. I would say candidates for the presidency of Ukraine. And you will also be a military man with military guarantees. We can call different names of people. I haven't announced my presidential ambitions yet. The same one laid on the landing of the president of Ukraine. Maybe extremely, maybe absolutely in the elections. And Visco? Well, we don't know. And also firm the rating policy per hour and can seriously change. If there can be a lot of different situations. Don't make haste. But Apple also cola light in the tunnel, the men in the tunnel. Chichek and Ukraine share is not from the 20s to the 30s, nor on the check. It was not Mina herself and Ukraine that was an ally, but the enemies, and knitted her an unfair mayor. Unfair by us from the point of view of the Germans. And Ukraine's caked guilt can really become frequent on the European Union, it can be frequent. So I am not respecting us a Czech, and a share of the Weimar Republic, I am respecting us a Czech, and a share of the European democratic power of choice. And we will repeat it again on Putin's dusty, we are talking about Zachinch. It will mean that Putin is Trump's brother, and the tactics of the acting popes to Ukraine, through the subsequent plans to the mayor. Once again, are already dissatisfied with Putin, and the United States Shlyak from Russia. I'll give you a face about 1,000 European leaders. I'll leave nothing. It's not like it's assigned to actions with moments of being tired of a peace plan, of course. We can, as part of the consultation, still ahead of time. And Russia on the idea, it meant that tomorrow we are not the topic and diplomacy. I say that we know that we are ready for discounts and actions, and you are not ready yet. In this situation, the one who is the worst at wasting the nervous system will win. Programs on the one who spend on Europeans in the hall, of course, and spend kilograms on the threshold. Still Russia turns on their not plan on I read that I think perfectly of course, and they need to fix a constructive position. They need, let's say, the truth, then why are they confiscating Russian assets? Because they are what they are ready to complete the blame, what they are preparing from Russia. Russia does not want everything. He does not want to, so he will follow your road to Ukraine. You can imagine Trump's custom. Putin turns on the plan of Ukraine to the Donbass. Do you think Trump will be fine? You are not this Trump. To explain the whole situation, I'm going to the factory. I asked Putin, and this means that there is no need for further progress, because they threw that you praise Trump. You praise about the share of our power, not about Trump. The problem is, I can think, and I will be Trump. So the topic of understanding is absolutely obvious speech. Tied up with what happens with Russian-Ukrainian guilt, I repeat again what is developed. I'm just talking about the fact that we managed not to cook for the Americans under Trump, he says. And it's great to blur with the European leader, and already a good moment, tied up with what they gave. Russia that is brought to, of course. We are Bach and Trump they need in those frequent powers. I am not disappointing Trump, of course. Does not disappoint. The rise allegedly will not, allegedly look further. Well, let's try to read his full text of Trump TP, and have already completed our scope with you. Oh. The pit widow Rosmo with President Zelensky. I'm talking the same way with the leader and unmarked Italy, NATO, Finland, France, Britain, Poland, Norway, Denmark, Thunderland. We have small tears and productive Razmek. And again I think so on the right and blow away. 27,000 soldiers looked into his place. Little Nicola status. There was no initiative, there was a lot of Nicola's fault. And it has begun, and we are going to embroider and embroider. It was Biden's fault. We're going to do it. And I think we would already be out, and they themselves will say that we have spent a rich time with President Putin. And I'm guessing we won't be able to earn money at a time. And we want richly in the ritual. We do not turn off pennies, but we can Rita and richly. "25 to 30,000 soldiers. It's important to have people in such places as Kiev, places all over Ukraine. Nobody nothing in another light, and we Nebligan we are bearing down, in view of the European leaders. And I want to finish the Tesh, and Russia wants the problem is that out, and wants to finish it. They will come up with a report. And Ukraine wants to talk about a report does not want to. We are also their primates on the same bot, they think it wakes up. Well, here I want, and so, and rise up Danny accepts. President Trump has said American officials for Axios. A respectful person will be able to take a guarantee about the ropes of Russia in a similar way to the NATO Article 4 Ukraine. Back in the date of President Trump, we have an extraordinary process with you. Stories, of course. I'm telling you, you are on the air today. I ask you to subscribe to the channel of those who subscribed to the broadcasts. It's a shame we are close to the millionth channel, but it's not a pity for the mayor. I would like it to still be in the PC, of course. The skin whoppers of Ukraine, the skin on the goodwill of the whole earth, I mean all Russian aggression. Put in a Podobake comments on what you think, and I will continue with the peace process. I'll be there for you too. Draw channels with the tools. And yes, help the discarded son of Ukraine. You are Batchet yourself. In those minds, it is now taking shape that the son of Ukraine is the main instrument of our savings, our survival, our independence. Our skin is your fate of proven fees, skin is yours in your imperious our power.